Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me well. Greetings from Vienna, first of all. Thank you, Robert, for the nice introduction. My name is Leopold Winkler, and I'm glad to present now the topic Prerequisites for BIM-based Invoicing in NATM project with my colleague, Mr. Melnik. First of all, the presented topic is part of the research project BIM in Tunneling. The research goal of this project is to implement a BIM-based reference process using data from ZAB. So the speaker, Nina Eder, also works in this project, for example, and my colleagues who spoke before, some of them as well do. So this project is funded by the FFG, the Austrian Research Promotion Agency. But in order to make this project as applicable as possible, we are very thankful to have our industry partners on board. Professor Hoema already presented the concept of TIMS, Tunneling Information Management System. I want now take you further and give you an insight how we can use this model for the construction phase, and I will show you in particular the use case of digital invoicing with TIMS. So here you can see a process diagram of invoicing as we see it in general in the future of construction. The two depicted lines present the task of the owner and the contractor during the construction phase. But don't want to go too much into detail, but it's important to mention that not all billings items, as we also heard from Nina Eder, we will get in future of the execution model because they are not element-based. So I wrote it down like Nina Eder spoke about 60% just can be connected with the plan. So the rest of it, especially during the excavation phase with NATM, is data we use for invoicing, which comes from the documentation data. And that's why a digital documentation management system is necessary and also needs to be role-based, has to have some role-based access rights. So what we are concentrating on now is with the software engineering team of Professor Hoema is actually the data management system and how we can invoice, use TIMS for invoicing according to our Austrian ONRE 2020-03 Part 1. So for that, we would need to have some prerequisites for digital invoicing. So you already saw the presentation of TIMS, how the documentation of tunnel rounds can be captured via a smart device or later on in the office of the site via the desktop version. But for the automated invoicing process, we need to define once at the project some configurations. For example, the configurations for the support measure types you can see here. For example, there is an example for the wire mesh. And we need to implement that once in the project, as you can see here, according to the ONRE 2020-03, for example, how the tunneling class is calculated, and further on how we calculate the material then for the invoicing. At the support measure definitions, then we link the support measure types with the bill of quantity entries, as you can see here for shotgrid, for example, under the entry BOQ entries. So, and we need to define some certain rules when each billing item is activated. The name, you can see here as name, shotgrid of top and bench headings show public, for example, is then used further on for the foreman at the thin client or at the smart mobile version. So with some additional prerequisites, for example, of the tunneling classes we introduce into teams and the cross-sections, the contracted cross-sections, we can establish the digital invoicing process in 6 steps. First step you already saw at the presentation of Professor Hoema. And after this, after we get the machine-readable construction data, the second step is, in my opinion, a very crucial one for the digital invoicing process, because it is the digital checking and mutual confirmation from the party of the owner of the one side and the contractor on the other side. This step needs to be integrated in general in every digital data management systems we will use on construction sites in future. So when the data is checked and confirmed, the cycle diagram can be generated automatically, and the actual tunneling classes can be mapped with the contracted tunneling classes. Then, in the defined billing periods, which is normally at our construction projects 1 month, the measurement items are generated in a measurement sheet and can be transmitted via ONRE data file. This is the Austrian standardized data file for measurement sheets. And we can put this information into our construction ERP systems, like you probably know, ABK, I2, or Nevaris BIM. And this would be the 6 steps for the digital invoicing process. So I will go now a bit inside the digital checking and mutual confirmation process. So in general, in construction, we have different stakeholders needs. Also different stakeholder need different information. So when data management systems on site are implemented, the right management is very crucial. So at teams, we have real users with certain identifications, and they are managed into different groups, or we also call them in different roles. The exit, so the access rights you get on the software is dependent on the role one user has at the construction site. We at our prototype defined 4 different groups: the administrator, the site manager or site engineer, the foreman, who basically uses the SIM client, and the client, which is normally represented by the site supervisor. So I will now show you how the documented tunnel rounds are checked and mutually confirmed by the role site manager and the site supervisor inside teams. We have the draft at the beginning, documented by the foreman. You already saw that in the video of Mr. Huimeyer. Then the manager would check normally the data of the tunnel round, perhaps make some changes, some additional comments, and then checks the data. So if the site checks the data of the tunnel round, then the data would become available for the supervising team of the client. And in this stage, either the supervisor can make some changes or the manager can cancel the confirmation. If one of them does so, the data of the tunnel round is in the state draft again. So we already implemented this you see here on the slide the manager's view of the different states. So normally then the manager again would take a look at the data and confirm it again, and this cycle goes on and on until the 2 parties have a common understanding of the data or of the work which actually occurred at our tunnel phases. And then the supervisor would confirm the data and all data which is confirmed can then be used for the further billing process. So here on the left side, you see how we normally map our contracted tunneling classes with the ones we actually have on our construction sites. We normally do that, is some of you probably know from construction sites, with long spreadsheet programs or spreadsheets and some nicely nested if functions. So these functions and this mapping is very, very fragile when it comes actually to changes on our construction sites. Think of, for example, when new tunneling classes are introduced during the construction, for example. So a big advantage is the logic we stored in the instances of the classes in our system. How is the process of mapping in our prototype? First of all, we start with the confirmation of the tunnel rounds, as I showed you. Then we determine the actual tunneling classes by calculating the first and second organizing number according to the UNOM 2020-03.1. We have that in our model classes, which you can see on the right side. Then the system automatically finds the contracted tunneling classes for the measurement items. In Teams, the measurement items can be created for the excavation items and the support measures. If measurement items for working hours are used, we can also take that into account. And then we create the measurement items. So the last two steps on the 46 steps I showed you is, we will show you now with a short video. My colleague, Mr. Melio, is going to comment that video.
In this video, we would like to demonstrate the current implementation of the interoperability function between Teams and I2. Can we please start it? Thank you. So for this demonstration, we have implemented roughly 86 tunnel rounds, which correspond to with the corresponding support measures, which correspond to a certain invoicing period of 1 month in 2018. Then we can export the ONRE file to the local file system, as you see right here. And we switch to I2, an ERP system where we create a new measurement sheet, which should also be compatible with the norm. We open it, and then we can import the local file to the system, like so. And as you can see here, we have all the necessary items and the positions on the left in the I2. It works. Thank you.
So at this state, thank you, Oleg. At this state, we can then furthermore add some BIM-based elements or measurement items or items of the bill of quantity, which are, for example, related to the facility site management. So the general opportunities we have here is that through these, from all the projects, we know that the potential of time saving is really big. So we can think of the daily documentation as well as the invoicing process of a time reduction up to 90%. We also did some expert interviews asking tunnel experts and also managers on the site how they think the time-saving potential of Teams is going to be. And then we noticed that not just the personnel on site can benefit directly from the savings, but also the payroll, for example, off-site can be optimized with the digital data. So at the diagram, you see like Blue is the normally paper-based documentation, roughly of one workday, and then gray, you see how the digital documentation could reduce that. So as one of the questions we got before at the presentation of Mr. Rehmer was how we like to go on for this research. First of all, we want to use, in the next step, we want to use the equipment process data, actually of the heavy equipment we have at tunnels, to pre-generate the activities times to generate the cycle diagram. And then further on, on one project we're working on now is to make it possible to use augmented reality after the tunnel is constructed to show the owner where they have where the measurement items are installed. So these two ideas are coming from Professor Matzak, who is really a driving force behind the scenes at this project. And further on, which is also a very big topic, another research we opened now, together with the team, the implementing team of teams, is how we use the data to evolve via a plugin in Revit, how we evolve the as-built model for further use. So everything you saw here was tested with all data from Setup A, but we're also looking for some real pilot projects to test teams and all of our workflows we implemented. So if one of you is interested, please don't hesitate to contact me or my colleagues. And in the name of the whole research team, not just the names which are mentioned here, I'd like to thank you and say Glück auf, and now we are happy to answer some of your questions.